episode 267 of 20 Minute Tims. I'm your host Jamie and I am joined by Martin Melly.
You are?
And Stephen.
Jamie, I am delighted to be here. What a phenomenal start to our season, and I'm overjoyed to be sitting in this very chair. There's nowhere I'd rather be, nowhere at all.
I am wearing, for viewers on our YouTube, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can check it out on YouTube, 20 Minute Tims. Smash that subscribe button. We'll notice that I'm wearing a red shirt because what I intend to do is get so angry that my face is going to match the colour of this shirt that I'm wearing tonight. We have been recording this podcast, Melly, for how many seasons?
This is our 7th.
And how many times...
Try to point to that there on camera.
Number 7, yeah. And how many times, Stephen, have we had to record the Celtic have crashed out of the Champions League at the early stages to a team we should have fucking pumped podcast?
Well, it's 4 in a row, isn't it? It's 4 in a row and possibly more, stretching back into the early days.
5 out of 7.
5 out of 7. We've been in the Champions League twice since we started this.
Yeah.
Remarkable. What a phenomenal record. But yeah, it's 4 in a row. We're heading for 10. We're going to try and secure the 10 in a row of going out of Europe or going out of the Champions League to vastly inferior teams in terms of their resource and turnover and all that.
There's no
absolutely solid record recent years.
Okay, the games come early for Celtic, is what they say. The games come early for all these clubs, Melly. I had a look back at just the last 3 seasons. Celtic's wage bill outweighs the last 3 teams that have put us out the Champions League wage bill to a power of 3. So our wage bill is greater than all of those other teams combined. We could pay the wages of Cluj, Ferencváros and Midtjylland players. All of those players we could pay the wages of, and maybe have a lot of money left over to pay more wages than anyone else in the Scottish League, and get put out by it. And it's the same old shit. And I know it's all early days and blah blah blah, but these games need to be won. You need to find a way to win them. Why did we not beat Midtjylland?
I think it was just a case of 1 or 2 players. I think if we had Karl Starfelt and Furuhashi in a couple of weeks before, we would have went through there. It gave us options. It gave us somebody at the back. We've seen this. We've all been talking about it. It's coming. This is coming. These games, we're going to go into them unprepared. I didn't quite think we'd go in this bad. This was the worst out of the lot for me because Midtjylland, they were decent, but you're just looking at that team going, that's not good enough to compete at any European level. The Conference, Europa League, this is the Champions League. And again, it was a winnable tie. All it would have taken is 1 or 2 players in that team. We played okay over the 2 games. We'd never get ripped apart. We didn't. We conceded silly goals from individual mistakes. But again, it's a game you're looking at going, that was there to be won. And now we see today that we've had the draw and all that, how difficult it's going to be to get into the Europa League just because of these ties. It's getting to the point now where we're not going out of the playoffs. We're not going out the 3rd round. We're going out of the first available opportunity. It's as if the people at Celtic, this creeps up on them, but we've all been saying it's coming. But also, do they care about this? What are Celtic now? Because they're not a European club.
Stephen, obviously, depending on who you speak to at Celtic, if you spoke to anyone at Celtic last season, they would have told you no big rebuild required.
Yes.
Everyone, apart from Celtic obviously, but everyone now, even Ange a wee bit, is starting to talk about the amount of work that's needing done at Celtic. Now, there's 2 things to address there. One, were the club deluded last season about how much work was involved? Now that even the manager's talking about how much work's involved with the club in a state of delusion, and that's why they didn't address it. Secondly, as fans, do we just need to accept now that this rebuild is taking place and that this game was just too early? Do we just need to go to rebuild the club? There's going to have to be some sacrifices.
Yeah, 100%.
And do we just need to accept that the Champions League this year?
Can I just jump in here? See if we could see the rebuild happening. I think we would accept that, but we can't see it happening, can we?
No.
We've been told that there's no rebuild.
We'll link with a guy for Shamrock Rovers today, mate. So relax. 23-year-old centre-half for Shamrock Rovers.
Christopher Ayer's 23 years old and we've just sold him.
Precisely.
I don't think there's any doubt that this rebuild is going to come with a fair degree of suffering, and I don't think it's going to be a case where we can still cling on to all things. I don't think we can be like, right, there's a massive rebuild needing done, while also we need to win every game. We need to be in the Champions League. We need to. I think the sacrifice is going to have to come, that this is going to take a lot more time than we thought. I'm not excusing anyone, but I think we need to strap ourselves in for a little bit of a bumpy road towards.
Do you think it's
this.
going to get worse before it gets better?
I don't think it'll get worse. I think this is the unfortunate thing. What I've been talking about with these games all along is that, right, if we get through these, it's just a case of, right, phew, absolute relief, and we can roll on to the next one. Hopefully we've got 3 players in by then. So I think the rough period, I think the plaster has probably been torn off, and I think this is maybe the worst it could get just now. Famous last words, clip that. But it's like, but it's like, I think now that we are getting players in, not quickly enough, granted, but I think this is hopefully the worst of it. The tragedy is, there's already been damage done, damage that can't be repaired. We can't get back into the Champions League. We're 3 points behind in the league. We'll come to that. That's not the be all and end all. We're not out of the league race, but I think
we've given them a head. We've effectively given them a head start.
Yeah, I think having lost the first league game of the season, it's like, see, the thing is, right, regular listeners or long-term listeners will know that on occasion we have like comedic names for these podcasts that go along the lines of like, an astonishing rant, like a kind of tabloid parody, astonishing rant. But see, sitting here just now with what's happened in the last week, I've not even got the energy about me to summon up any kind of like faux indignation.
I do.
But what I mean is that I can't sit here and go, oh, this is a disgrace, and because the fact is, I'm not surprised in the slightest. That I'm not like blown away by what's happened to Celtic in the first couple of weeks of the season, because quite frankly, this is exactly what we deserve. It's not, if we'd have got through that tie, again, it would have been relief, but would have been lucky, to be perfectly honest, given the damage that's been done to the squad, given the half-arsed nature of this rebuild. I think we'd have been scraping through, and the wake-up call would have come at a later date anyway.
Yeah.
But see, when you're saying what you're saying there, what you said, Jamie, about are we just going to accept this? But it didn't have to be like this. No. This game isn't as if the UEFA have went, oh, by the way, we've moved all that forward. We knew this was coming. This was the important one, because we seen with the draw, we would get PSV. No matter who we got in the next round, it was going to be difficult. Then for the final game, it would have been possibly Benfica or Shakhtar or something like that. So Celtic were never going to qualify for the Champions League in a normal season this season because they didn't win the league. But to have to go into this game where you think, right, it's a new manager in, give him a head start, a couple of players in, we'll get going. But to have him having nobody in there apart from a 19-year-old winger is the only signing he can play is unacceptable. And it's a game that, again, Celtic could have easily went through if individual errors hadn't happened. But these individual errors happened because you're either playing players not good enough or players who simply aren't ready.
We'll come to that with the Hearts game, but people say, if X, Y and Z didn't, these are going to happen over the course of games. Yeah. Even when you're winning 4 or 5-0, individual errors are going to happen. You're going to maybe let in a stupid. It's the problems at Celtic just now, I feel, run so deep, and you just need to take one look at that team that played against Midtjylland, that went out against Midtjylland. On paper, Stephen, I heard you say this in the reaction pod. On paper, that team should be good enough, right? If it's like top trumps or Football Manager and you just put down everyone's stats versus the Midtjylland stats, but what you're no factoring in here is Odsonne Edouard mind seems to be elsewhere.
Yeah.
Abada's just in, perhaps, he's not fully up to speed. Soro, we're now starting to discover that maybe Soro wasn't so good. He was just better than a crap Scott Brown. Greg Taylor, Ralston don't fit the system. Welsh and Murray are not good. Well, not good enough, but they're not experienced enough, and we've got goalkeeper problems. So when you factor in all these different facets of what is going on at the club, I'm looking at Ange and I genuinely feel sorry for the guy.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. He's got one hand turned behind his back, and he's putting a brave face on it, and he's saying, look, I knew the job was in, I knew what was involved, but at the same time he's saying, look, we're not good enough the final third, I'm not doing a good enough job, and I kind of feel like it's gotten to the point where it's like out of his hands. Someone else needs to help the guy out.
That team isn't a team to compete in Scotland, I would say. That would struggle to win 30 out of 38 games, because you can't have that. You can't have 2 fullbacks who aren't suited to it and who quite simply aren't good enough anyway. Even if Ange was to play fullbacks that bomb on, those 2 can't do that either. What's he going to do? He can't change his system there. Even if when it got to the point where Celtic, they let in the equaliser, if he turns round, he's like, what can I do here? Yeah. I've got literally one player in James Forrest who can come on and maybe make a difference. After that, there's nothing. It's guys who are either off form or not good enough. And even the guys that are on the park, Odsonne Edouard hasn't been on form. There's so many players off form, and as you said, all it takes is one mistake from one player. But Celtic have got a goalkeeper who's not good enough. The back four, 2 are inexperienced and 2 aren't good enough. So that's 5 players to start with. Then you move into the midfield. If Sorrow makes a mistake, Turnbull's still a young guy. Abada's just in the door, and Odsonne Edwards is misfiring. That's 9 or 10 players where you can't afford any mistakes. Add to that the low confidence. Add to that the morale around the club. It's a concoction that was always going to end this way. And Celtic, I think, done well to get to extra time.
Well, that's to combine both of the points you've just made. It's like you talk about how we're a good team on paper. It's starting to look a little bit more solid now that there's a couple of players back. But the fact is, we're carrying so much baggage just now that the superior talent on paper just doesn't count for anything.
It counts for absolutely nothing now. No. I mean, looking at that bench, Ajeti, Rogic and Bolin goalie, might as well get rid of them.
Yeah.
If we can find them to take these guys, we might as well get rid of them. All this stuff about past glories, the club need a real proper clear out. And I'm looking at it, and the more I watch Celtic, the more it's starting to do. I mean, we all knew that the rebuild was going to be huge. The more I'm looking at it, the more, is this actually a bigger job than we all thought? Because it seems that last season never ended, Stephen.
Well, the thing with a rebuild is that it's all very well saying that for months and months on end, but when it actually comes to doing it, we've kind of hit the wall with it now because the results have turned terrible over the last several months, obviously. But now that the season has started and things aren't any better, we're all of a sudden faced with the reality of what a rebuild actually means, and it's a lot worse than just saying it.
See, I was thinking about this, but when you look at sort of last season's team, you had Barkas or Bain and goal. Pretty much, they're not good enough, so we needed to do something there. Duffy was always going to leave. Aya was always going to leave. John Joe Kenny replaced Frimpong and El Hamid, so he was only in a 6-month loan. He was going to leave. Laxalt was going to leave. So Scott Brown was going to leave. All these people were leaving. There was no doubt that they were leaving. We've still got Christie and Edward who are most likely to leave. It's not as if we can say, maybe these players want to go, they don't want to be here. These were either loan players, guys going out of contract, or guys that want to go. There's no excuse to even think that these guys are going to be sticking around, and you need to replace them.
Just to be clear on what I said, I mean that I don't mean the rebuild is worse than we imagined. I mean to be actually in it, it feels worse than the kind of abstract concept of there's a rebuild on the way coming.
It should be quite fun because it should be a revolving door, guys coming in and guys going out, but it's just guys going out and you're like, mate, can you hold on for a couple of weeks, please?
It's like the Donald Rumsfeld quote, you never thought you'd listen to it. He goes, he said, there's known knowns, there's known unknowns, and there's unknown unknowns. And that's kind of what we're in the middle of here with this rebuild. Every week you're like, you think like, so you look at Edward and you go, right, okay, well, it's not the best squad, and we've got Edwards on the way out, but at least we've still got him for these games and we should play him. Then you look at it and go, there's no point playing. There's almost no point playing him, but he's obviously a half-cocked Edward, as I heard him described in the paper, like a gun, incidentally, is a better option than Lee Griffiths and Ajeti, and it's 100% right. Yeah. But maybe I'm being a bit short-term about it, right? But 2 players we discussed on a previous podcast, Doig and Nisbet, definitely leaving Hibs. Better than what we've got. Oh. Don't need quarantine. It seems like an absolute no-brainer, but we're still persistent. And you can go and get Doig, who's a young guy, and another left back in. You can do both. The money's there to do it.
We did that a couple of seasons ago and go in and get 2 left backs, one domestic based.
Still stuck with him?
And one domestic young guy.
Yeah, that would mean 4 left backs.
And one a European based player in bowling goalie. Went in and did it before. It just turns out neither of them are good enough. But it's not beyond the realms of possibility that you can go and get 2 players for a position at the same time.
Hibs would take Greg Taylor. That's probably Greg Taylor's level.
I watched the Hibs game yesterday and Nisbet was good. We didn't score, I didn't assist, but he had
some scouting you've done there, by the way.
He had a hand in the goals, and you're just looking at it. It's pretty much a no-brainer for Celtic. Just go and get him. Is he better than Lee Griffiths? MD is right now because he's not even fit enough. Is he better than Albion Ajeti? Yes, because he's doing something on a pitch. And Odsonne Edouard is misfiring and it will be away at some point. But even if we brought in Nisbet, we'd still need somebody else as well.
We know Kevin Nisbet's talented, Stephen, but can he have a laugh?
Done.
That, my friends, is an in-joke. Everyone in here enjoyed it, but we'll leave it up to the imagination. Oh, and one other person will get it.
How much of this, though, does land on the manager's shoulders? Like, I know he's got one arm tied behind his back, but he's won. I'm now doing my. Has he won one game since he came in?
Well, no,
Charlton?
friendlies, we'll not count them, but he's 0 out of 3.
Well, I'm doing my flavour by including the friendlies.
Competitive games, 0 out of 3.
I mean,
What a win it was, though.
I know. Surely there's enough there to navigate a win in some of these games.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this as well today, looking at the games in isolation. I don't think Celtic have played poor in any of the games. I think they've had a lot of possession, well, sometimes not doing anything with it, but when you look at it sort of forensically, the first Michelin game, near beaten, gets sent off after being an absolute mug. Barkas throws one in the net, despite Celtic not really conceding many chances or not being ripped apart. We go to the second Michelin game, their first goal, Greg Taylor lets his man run off him. The second goal is an extra time. Celtic are a wee bit wary. Paper thin squad. Second phase from a free kick. David Turnbull lets his man go, and there we go. The game against Hearts, we have the first goal. Starfelt all over the place, defence all over the place, goal. Hearts have something to cling on to and just sat in the whole game. And then the second Hearts goal is a flighted ball into the box where near beat on, we'll discuss it later, but does nothing, and Scott Bain's miles off his line. Every goal was avoidable, but every goal was an individual error. We've not been ripped apart, we've not conceded chance after chance. We've had,
but look, see this individual errors part. I see when I hear people say that, the one man's face comes to my mind, Stephen. It's Neil Francis Lennon. That's what I heard all season for Neil Lennon. Individual errors, and people would say to Neil Lennon, "Well, you need to find a way to win these games." And you know, like so we know already that Ralston and Taylor can't play the fullback way that Ange Postecoglou wants them to play. So can Ange Postecoglou, he must have more than one trigger, but he must, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but he must look at that and go, right, well, do you know what, I'm going to augment what I'm doing with my fullbacks just to get us through these games. Is it not a bit ideological to continue to play this way when he's admitting he doesn't have the players? When you need to, for all it's said and done, surely there's an element here that the manager needs to start winning football games and stop saying I don't have the players or not. Come on.
But for me, if Ange Postecoglou comes in here and sells us this is my philosophy, this is my way of playing, and we all bought into it, we're all looking forward to it. He's told the players, apparently they've bought into it as well, and then after one game he goes like that, see everything I've spoke about, everything I believe that, throw that in the bin and we'll do something else. You can't do that.
He doesn't have to do that though. What he can say is, look lads, we're up against it here.
But
here's the
that's
plan.
What I said. Do you want Taylor and Ralston to bomb on? They can't do that. They're not good enough to do that. So either he changes what he believes in, which I don't think he should do, or he sticks with it and tries to make it better until he can get the players in. There's no excuses for Celtic not having the players in. He can't come up with all this philosophy then go, do you know what, yous aren't good enough, because if he doesn't believe in his own system, his players aren't going to, and then you lose them as well.
There's also a case for the defence, I would say, or not the literal defence, but the defence, the defence of the system is that, yeah, I totally agree with what Melly's just said about you can't just abandon it. You can maybe adjust it slightly, but
Celtic kind of did.
Yeah, what we need to remember as well is we're in a very difficult period at the moment. It's ugly. We're not playing well. Well, we're playing okay, but not getting results. Obviously, we still need to get a tune out of these players somehow. So again, turning around to these guys and saying, right, I've got this firm belief in the way that I want to play. We've all discussed it for weeks that I've been here. We've all worked on it, but you guys aren't good enough to deliver it, so we're going to play 4-4-2 and get the ball in the mix. I know that's
get two strikers.
That's obviously an exaggerated example, but I think in order to continue to get the best out of these players, we need to try and show some belief in them, and I don't know what telling them that they're not capable of playing the way. And do you know what? I think I'm maybe getting ahead of myself. In the Hearts game, Celtic were robbed of a perfectly good goal. We'll come to that, which came from Greg Taylor taking up a pretty good position and was called offside.
Who scored a goal as well?
Yeah, Danny Ralves scored the other goal as well. So to me, there's nothing really going all that badly wrong with what the system is. It's just that we're toothless up front and making terrible mistakes at the back, and I don't know how you fix those with just adjusting the system at the moment.
If it was the case of individual errors and it was, look, Near Beaton's cost us 4 goals, but he's not. It's a different individual every time. So you're like, oh, do I change my system? But what we're going to do, because you've seen in the Hearts game, that's just their winning goal is a floated ball into the box in the last minute. What you need there is presence, a bit of height and physicality, and people willing to go and win it. And Celtic don't have any of them. You can't. Ange Postecoglou's a manager. He's not a miracle worker. He can't work in defence all day. Give his players Miracle Grow or give Near Beat on a set of balls. It's gone with these guys.
My problem here is, Stephen, managers at Celtic famously don't get time. Now, I don't mean time from the fans, although that is a thing. What I mean is time on the training pitch. Brendan Rodgers himself complained about the lack of time on the training pitch. There needs to be some I mean, maybe in some perverse way, not having any European football this season might actually benefit Celtic because it will give those extra hours on the training pitch, extra time to implement what he wants to implement. But I suppose it all comes back to the main thing, Stephen, and that is he needs backed.
Yeah.
Oh, aye. I mean, that it goes without saying. That's the main complaint. We can talk to death about all the various permutations and all the various things that are going on at the club, but that's the number one thing. We just need better, fresh players in.
It's like, I suppose, to use a hackneyed Formula 1 analogy, it doesn't matter how good the driver is. You could have Lewis Hamilton, but if the car is unable to compete, then there's no point going to Lewis Hamilton drive faster. Oh, these fucking tyres are shit. I've got half a tank of fuel. Like other parts of cars don't work. I can't name them at the top of my head. The steering wheel's bent.
Spark plugs, that's a bit, isn't it? That's a part.
But my exhaust's rattling and all that.
Well, that's a good point as well, because the infrastructure just simply isn't there. We can't go from, see, just because of a few bad results, right? We can't go from acknowledging and debating to death the merits and importance, the crucial nature of having a sporting director and all, even a scouting department, a head of recruitment. We can't just talk to death about the importance of all these things, and then a couple of results in, we kind of just turn around and say, well, it doesn't matter, the manager needs to get results. It can't be as simple as that. We need all these things in place, and that comes as part of the rebuild and the stuff that's just simply not happening quick enough. I understand that it might be difficult to get players. We had that discussion last week. It might be difficult to get players in a prompt manner in time for qualifiers, but there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that you can't have staff in at all.
Yeah.
That those are employees. Those are guys who are looking for jobs, who are looking to develop or change careers.
And presumably when you lose a member of staff, as has been pointed out, they give a notice.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a standard recruitment process. It's not a case of scouting. And
you don't need to buy them, or
exactly. You don't need to work out like compensation.
You should see. You're referring to Andrew's comment about when he was asked about whether he'll not get the backroom staff in. He said it's not so much backroom staff; it's strength and conditioning, coaching, sports science.
Jack Naylor was Celtic's head of sports science. He left just in the summer. They went to Leipzig, right? Me and Stephen discussed this in the post-match reaction. That's fine. That's a good opportunity for a guy from Celtic going there. He's been at big clubs before. But how long did it take Leipzig to see that's a guy and go and get him? It's not a month like it takes Celtic to do, or 2 months. They went and got him.
It's probably more traditional than that. It's probably Leipzig post a job advert up somewhere, or some agency getting, he applies for it, hands in his 30 days notice to Celtic, or his 3 months notice. Celtic know he's leaving, but Celtic are so focused on the one thing, getting the manager in, that they don't bother dealing with everything else.
Nicky Hammond left not long after, well, he said he was leaving at the end of the season, not long after Neil Lennon. He's not being replaced. But another thing I was thinking of was, we absolutely slaughtered, and I'm including us here, slaughtered Lee Congerton. Couldn't get the players in, not good players. But then you're looking down at Leicester. Well, they've signed Ryan Bertrand, they've signed Patson Daka, I think they've signed somebody else. They did the same last season. Their season doesn't start for another couple of weeks. They signed these guys a month ago. Yeah. So it's not Lee Congerton, it's not Leicester, it's Celtic. And then again, you're looking at it in the summer, I still think he's a bit of a pussy, but Eddie Howe, no wonder he didn't come to this, because this is what he was going to walk into. Do you think somebody's going to put their reputation in the line that sort of knows the British game, speaks to the Celtic hierarchy and goes, you don't have a clue what they're doing? Because it's borne out now. They don't have a clue what they're doing. They can't do deals.
And this is the point that I suppose it comes back to, right? So I've had a bee in my bonnet about this for the past couple of weeks. And I've spoken about it on the podcast about Don Mackay's entrance and where's the big win? where is the big? It's just loss after loss after loss after loss. It's not getting players in. It's losing the Champions League. It's losing at Hearts. It's the manager being frustrated. It's not having the backroom staff. It's players not being fit. It's players leaving at the end of their contracts. It's just like it's bang, 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 bang. It's like one after the other. And what is annoying me a wee bit, especially after the Midtjylland game, is that it's Ange Postecoglou that's got to front up these questions, even though it's not his fault. And we don't get to ask Ange questions because the Don Mackay and the club have introduced the sort of fan media outreach thing that we've been a part of, and what that amounts to is us getting invited onto a Zoom to ask one question to a guy, and then we get sent a terrible audio copy that's almost unusable. Yeah. It's almost, personally feeling it's feeling a wee bit like lip service. But where is Don Mackay? Don Mackay should have come out after Midtjylland and went, look, and it doesn't have to be a negative, it can be a positive, it can be, look, we're working bloody hard to get players in. That was too soon, but don't worry, this club will be back. You know, he could come out and say what we're trying to do, but it's just like loss, manager's frustrated, bad result. And you think to yourself, somebody needs to put their finger in the dam here. Do you know what I mean? and do something. Because we're all getting agitated, we're all getting pissed off. And it's not based on nothing. It's no, you know, it's based on the fact that the calamitous clown car for last season has just continued right into this season.
Just jumped back in. It started up the engine again.
And you think to yourself, wait, I thought this was meant to be new and exciting and new guys on board, and it's Ange I feel sorry. It is Ange I feel sorry for. And myself.
And myself. There's nothing changed apart from Ange and Dom, and we spoke about this. So you're going like Dom Mackay, willing to give you a wee bit of time, but a month left in this transfer window, and we've still got serious surgery to do as well. But I'm wondering, like, Dom Mackay's come in, and it's looking like after the Hearts game and the Midtjylland game, the Celtic board have went, oh, the peasants were right again. We'll need to lock up the boards this week.
Munchers.
Yeah. So, and Dom Mackay, is he going in there and trying to change things, or is he going in? I think at Celtic, it's just a mess. So the culture has to change, and I don't think you can do that with one guy going in there. He has to implement that as well,
because he's the boss. He's the top of the tree.
I'd like to know how it works, because if he's saying this is how we're going to do it, why is it not happening?
If Don Mackay wanted a button on his desk that he pressed and someone brought him a cold Diet Coke every day, he should be able to have it by the end of the week. That's how much of the boss he is.
Stop talking about Diet Coke. You've got a can on camera.
If he wanted a nice, cool, delicious Diet Coke, he should get it.
We discussed this on one of our Patreon properties, the Friday Phone, and we talked about this recently as well.
We've got to plug the Patreon at the beginning of the
Yeah,
podcast
we
again.
did.
Patreon.com/20minute Tim's podcasts.
The Friday Phone-In, which is officially our patrons' favourite podcast. But we were talking about this, and I speculated about how easy it is to get everything past all the dusty old guys that are in the boardroom. Don Mackay might be the boss, but it might be like being a bit like the president of USA, where you've got these ideas, but you can't get it past the Senate, so you're consulting.
I don't think everything needs to go by the board, though.
Maybe not.
The fundamental day-to-day running changes, the way things work within a business, the CEO should be able to change it. If he wants to, I don't know, make massive changes to the structure of the business or whatever, I'm sure that goes past the board. I don't know, I didn't do a business degree. But if he wants to speed things, for example, he wants to speed things up through transfers, and right now the process is it goes through 800 people and it's taking a month, he should be able to change that. Yeah. If he wants to hire 4 scouts, he should be able to hire 4 scouts.
Isn't this what we didn't want? We didn't want somebody micromanaging like Peter Law. He's got a different job title. We wanted him to come in.
I think the problem is that's what's needed now.
Well, we wanted him to come in and get the right people in to do these jobs, but there's nobody come in, so it's all the same people
and the thing
their same I don't know what they're doing, but their same routine, their same thing they've been doing the whole time that's not been working, and they're still doing it, and we're sitting here like, this is getting worse, and you're just sitting there doing nothing.
What was the 2 phrases Don Mackay used at the press conference?
Modernisation
and communication, right? And so far, the communication from the club isn't good enough, because we are sitting here, right? We're just fans, and we don't know any better than the majority of fans, right? We just interpret what we see and give our opinion. That's what we do in this podcast, and we're like, nothing's happening. The guy's not coming in. The manager's pissed off. So the club should be, if the club do listen to this pod, they should be going, right, so that's kind of like what our action, that's the communication we are giving out, because it looks like nothing's happening. It looks like things are getting worse. Not, the club isn't necessarily regressing, but it looks as if there's a lot of the same old bad habits. The communication hasn't really improved.
It is regressing as well, and we're going out
Yeah,
earlier and
yeah.
earlier
Yeah,
every season.
well, true,
But
yeah.
we're a club in Europe. We're not a European club anymore. We're not competing.
See this stuff about Celtic being this is I suppose we could talk about this as well, Stephen. Celtic are a Champions League club, and the lights, no offence, as much as we want that to be the case, Celtic, you seriously cannot call Celtic a Champions League club.
Well, the one criteria for it is that you qualify for the competition,
Yeah.
and we can't do that for several years now, so there's no debate over that at all. We might be a Champions League club in terms of stature and history and all that, but that doesn't get you into the competition. That doesn't count for anything at all, as much as we probably would like it to be, rather than being on telly, having a big TV deal and all that. But the fact is, no, Celtic are absolutely nowhere near the Champions League. To go out at the first available, or the first possible juncture again into City and go, aye, but we're a Champions League club,
well,
it would be ludicrous. So no, there's no debate there.
Another person I feel sorry for, Melee Cal McGregor. That goal was absolutely sublime. It should have been one of the great Celtic European goals. You'll be lucky if MD remembers it because of what happened.
It was an absolute cracker. You'd see on anywhere and you go, that's an absolute world class finish. And Celtic were all right up to that point, but that gave us a wee bit of spark, and then it's a great goal, and you're just like, that's going to be lost over the years now.
It's amazing that in 5 years' time, people will have totally forgotten that goal, but they will still be talking about how he missed a chance against Mönchengladbach about 3 years before. There's absolutely no justice in the
When
world.
we were a Champions League team.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But then again, it's just that simple. One run off Greg Taylor and somebody scored, and Celtic, nothing was really happening there that you were worried about, and then all of a sudden the momentum starts to shift. But it was that wee moment where James Forrest had that chance, and although he's just come on the pitch, he should do better with it. They go up the pitch and score, and you can just feel that this isn't going to turn, because I got the feeling that Ange I brought Forrest on, he should have made the difference. If we go 2-0 up, I can see he's conceding a couple of goals, but I think we would have been seeing that out. And then he's turning around, he's like, how am I going to change this now? Because everything I've got's out there. I brought the one guy on that I feel can change it. And now we're up against it. We're going into extra time when we've not built up that match fitness. And you just felt it was sort of slipping away. And we got it with Martin O'Neill at one point as well, where he was in a European match against Villarreal, and we let in a goal, and he just turned around. It was like Jamie Smith and all that on the bench. You're like, you can't do this to these young guys, or these guys that aren't good enough. So it just felt that it was shifting away from Celtic, and there was nothing we could really do to stop it.
I mean, far from, I agree with you, not throwing these guys to the wolves when they're either young players or developing or whatever. But quite aside from that, you can't turn to them because they're not good enough. No. And I don't want to be terribly harsh there, but I'm just talking broadly about the state of the squad. It's all very well us sitting at home and shouting about how I'll make a sub. I can't believe it's got to X minute and we've not made a sub yet. But then you think about who's actually there. You have to make a sub that's going to freshen up the game in some way, or turn the game in your favour, and you have to have a certain level of talent in order to do that. Or a certain
Yeti and Rogic bouncing on,
exactly,
running all over the place for you, giving you everything.
A certain amount of urgency about the style of your play, and Tom Rogic is absolutely not that. A Yeti, I was desperate to do well this season, but it's just not started well. I was brought up again. It's the exact same point as we made last week. I feel like I don't want to apologise for being too positive at times, but I was on one of our Patreon podcasts, I think, just a reaction saying, Ayeti's going to be a revelation this season. All he needs is just the right service. He's going to get goals. But then he's not been picked for a reason, because as we've already discussed, Edouard, all this, he's a £30 million player, all the talent in the world, the best player in Scotland, all these goals he scored, the ability to turn a game, it counts for nothing because he's not doing it anymore. It is over. That the well runneth dry with Edouard. So if he's playing in that condition, and Ange isn't a stupid man, if he's watching Odsonne Edouard turn in these performances and still doesn't fancy a Yeti to turn in more than that,
this is the third manager in a season that's not picked Albion Ayeti.
Yeah.
Third manager, so you can go, he's not had a chance. You earn that chance. You earn that chance in training by putting in the work, and he's obviously not doing it. It's just another one that's not worked out for us. And as you saying, Angie's turning around. Like, what can I do here? And when it got to extra time, you're like, penalties was probably Celtic's best shout,
Yeah.
or if they get a goal from somewhere, because you knew at some point everything that's happened, the players not being good enough, the confidence sapping away, can't make any changes, can't freshen up, tiredness kicking in. One of that back five is going to let Celtic down, or somebody's going to let Celtic down. And again, it was a set piece, didn't quite get it clear, and Turnbull just switches off for a second. The guy gets in behind him, and then when that goal goes in, you just think, this is gone.
Yeah.
This is gone.
You knew it at that point. And, from 70 minutes on, Celtic didn't really look as if they were ever going to get back into the game. No. Extra time was a complete
nothing.
bust.
It was nothing.
It was a complete busted flush.
It actually could have been worse because Ntcham brought on a young boy, Lint, I think his name was, who actually got on the end of a couple of chances and made a bit of an arse of both of them. He had a volley at the near post that just kind of went, that kind of sclaffed it wide. So, the tide had well and truly turned at that point.
When you mentioned that, Ntcham made subs and they all made a difference. And I thought that was the difference in the game, because even though that Celtic team isn't good enough to be put into the Champions League, they weren't bad, but Ntcham, their subs changed the game because they brought on a bit of emphasis, a bit of urgency, a bit of pace, and they got the result from it. Celtic, any sub Celtic made sort of hindered them because the players aren't good enough, or there's just nothing there, like taking guys off and bringing on Tom Rogic. Stephen spoke about it. There's one bit where Tom Rogic went to play a pass. He just telegraphed to the guy that the guy just slid and just took it off him, and he just put his head in his hands. Mate, it was a 5-yard pass. And that's the guy you're bringing on to save your Champions League hopes, a guy that's not contributed really to Celtic's first team for 2 seasons now.
No. Did they do a Samaras with that? Do you remember Samaras's trick? Was he used to aim for the ball-shaped hole in the goalkeeper, so he would shoot there in the goalkeeper's chest, and then his reaction would be like, I can't believe that keeper has pulled off this save. Did Rogic do that with that pass? His 5-yard pass.
If Samaras was shooting into Celtic's keepers now, maybe that's where he gets it from.
And that brings us nicely on to the Hearts game. 0 wins in the first three competitive games for Ange. I've got to say, I was a wee bit more annoyed at the manager on this game. Some of the selections to me were a bit odd. I thought bringing back Near Bitton was a strange one, given Stephen Welsh is a better centre-half than Near Bitton.
Yeah, but again, it's the 120 minutes during the week, isn't it? You're asking a young guy, just flung him in there, but...
I mean, that didn't work out for Near Bitton. Pulled up a cramp about 70 minutes in.
I know. Look, I wouldn't have Bitton in the team, but looking at it before the game, you can maybe see it. Look, it's a bit of height. He's experienced. He knows what he's doing. Maybe you can see he's maybe more of a guy that could help Starfelt get through the game. But then
is that because that reach, Stephen? Is that what that noise was?
I'm trying here, but at the end of the day, he's no good enough, and he costs Celtic again, and he's costing Celtic in every game he plays. Maybe it's just to try and freshen up that back line, but I'd have had Welsh in as well.
The big debate, Stephen, post Hearts was all about the goalkeeping situation. We don't need to go over the Celtic goalkeeping situation, but a lot of chat after the game about how Celtic were mad to let Craig Gordon go. The way I see it is, at the time, letting Craig Gordon go was the correct decision.
Yeah.
It was the correct decision, although in hindsight it's turned out that Craig Gordon might still be a better shot stopper than the 2 goalkeepers we've got.
He is a better shot stopper than the 2 keepers we've got, but the thing is, he's been playing the Championship for the last year.
Another thing we need to remember, sorry to talk over you, but we need to remember a lot of the people, especially in sports media, commenting on this will openly admit they're Craig Gordon's friends.
Yeah.
A lot of people go, I'm friends with Craig Gordon, he's a really good guy, he wasn't treated well by Celtic. There's a bit of internal bias there, but even Celtic fans were saying, we were daft to get rid of Craig Gordon. I don't think we were at the time.
Did they not reject a contract though?
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Massively reduced though, to be fair.
Well,
I think it was. I think it was
third choice at the time, wasn't
was
he?
he not 35 or something as well?
He was. I think it was less than half of what he was getting paid,
Right,
and
well,
he felt a bit mistreated by Celtic at the time.
Fair enough. I don't really want to do him down for that, because it might be a bit insulting to put in a little bit of service for a club or company, and be kind of slapped in the face like that. But ultimately, this is how football works. Like, the clubs need to make these decisions eventually. Given a guy at whether he was 34, 35, whatever age he was, maybe even older than that, then giving a guy a good contract isn't always the greatest of decisions. We can't just continue to keep players in the fear that will not replace them, because that's
Griffith,
crazy.
Rogic, Bitton,
And Scott Brown, all these guys, Lustig. We can't just go, these guys in their mid-30s, we should never have let them go because we've not replaced them. No, those two things are separate for me. You should let guys in their mid-30s go, but you should replace them better. I know that's the simplest thing in the world to say, but no, look, the people who talk about this, it's all very reactionary.
Yeah, because the logic follows. We go, Craig Gordon's getting old. So what odd contract are we going to offer a 35-year-old? Okay, we'll offer. Celtic would turn and say, well, we did offer Craig Gordon a contract. We did offer him one.
Yeah.
We also scouted and spent £5 million on a top-class European Champions League level goalkeeper from Athens who was coming in to take Craig Gordon's place. So Celtic would say, look, okay, that player turned out to be shy, rigged the goalkeeper that we've got. But Celtic would say, well, we did try and keep and we did sign someone else.
Look at the optics the other way around. Imagine Celtic had done that. We're not going to sign this £5 million Greek international goalkeeper who's played in the Champions League and all the other things that people use.
Imagine it.
Aye, all the other things
Imagine
that
leaked out. Celtic have pulled out of a deal to sign Vasilis Barkas for £5 million for AEK Athens. Instead, they've opted to keep Craig Gordon on a 2-year deal.
People would have exploded. So Celtic
Twitter
can't
would have
win.
crashed.
Aye, the world would have spun back the other way if Celtic had done that. So they can't really win in that regard. It's not. I mean, it is their fault that Barkas isn't a good goalkeeper, but you can't just cling on to these players indefinitely because you're never going to replace them. The thing with Craig Gordon is as well, much like a lot of these players like Lustig, like Brown, like Johnny Hayes and all that, a lot of romanticisation goes on as well. Craig Gordon had
the most howlers of any Celtic keeper I've seen in my life.
Apart from Barkas.
Yeah.
No, he's had more than Barkas.
Well, he has had more than
Barkas.
Barkas.
Forgive me for not knowing the Twitter handle, but someone put up a thread of all...
Connor Emma.
Was it something like that? But somebody put up a thread of all the absolute arses he'd made of things
European
in
games.
Europe.
Yeah.
Just in Europe, there was about 10 of them. So let's not get carried away. Craig Gordon was a decent keeper. He did a great job for Celtic, but it's long gone. Let's try and move forward rather than
It's just
constantly...
that word recruitment again, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, Celtic were, somebody said on Sports Sound or something, I can't remember who it was, it doesn't matter anyway. The point was Nicky Hammond came and put a recruitment structure in place and then left. So by all accounts, the recruitment structure at Celtic exists. I've got no confidence in it though.
No.
None at all.
And see, Craig Gordon, what did he do? He made 2 saves that he should have made.
Routine
he
saves,
should have
yeah.
made those saves, but the fact is, Celtic, the guy in the opposite goal can't make those saves. Craig Gordon saves that one, that John Souttar header, because he'd probably be positioned right. But Celtic don't have that, and that's why this is sort of blown out of proportion. Craig Gordon wasn't going to stay at Celtic. He wasn't going to get a game. He's not played football for so long. He wants to prolong his career, fine. But to say we need Craig Gordon, it's again just, we need a good goalie.
Yeah,
Simple
that's all
as
it is.
that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Craig Gordon.
Yeah.
You said, Stephen, on the live match build-up that we do, now this is where I'm going to plug the Patreon. Patreon.com/20minutetims is a great way for you to support this podcast. If you've been listening for a while, you would have heard us speak about the Patreon. Patreon.com/20minutetims is a great way to check it out. That's the reason we're here on YouTube, for the support of our Patreons. And in exchange for that support, what we do is give you hours and hours of additional content. Actually, we released our 500th
500.
Patreon.
Celtic ruined it.
Yeah.
Celtic ruined it. Their match reaction to the Hearts game was the 500th. Just podcast alone.
Yeah.
That doesn't even include videos and writing from our contributors, Ryan and Tom and all that. So that was 500 episodes.
500 podcasts have been on the Patreon. We've got the Colts covered this season. We're going to every Colts game. We do live build-up for the matches, so you can come and join us and take part in that. We do reaction podcasts. We've got a few more announcements coming throughout the season for when we're allowed back into the stadium. Some really good, interesting content coming there. We've got writing, videos, podcasts. We cover it all, and it's all on patreon.com.
Women's game as well covered this year.
Yep.
Women's game covered this year. Patreon.com/20minutetims. It starts at £2.50 a month or thereabouts to support us for additional podcasts, all the way up to £9 a month, although it does work out about £7 when you pay for the whole year, £7 odd a month. But as I say, many tiers there for whatever level that you're comfortable with. Check it out. Now, Stephen, Gary Mackay-Stephen, I believe you two on the build up to the Hearts game said,
King Pussy, I called him.
you called him King Pussy. He must have been watching it because he's a patron.
They pinned that video up on the dressing room wall. Do you hear what this guy's saying about you? That's all the motivation they needed was Melly calling him that.
You, Stephen, said, I believe, something along the lines of, don't let Gary Mackay-Stephen score.
I saw something like that. I mean, it would only be written in the stars for Craig Gordon to make 2 routine saves at the end, and for that to be the narrative of a game, and for Gary Mackay-Stephen to come back and haunt us.
My point is, though, aside from all this, and I'm going to ask the same question that I asked about the Midland game, Hearts are the newly promoted side. surely the manager here, Stephen, could come up with some way to beat Hearts. Come on.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But again, I look at the team and it's not ready. It's not there.
Forrest, Turnbull, Abada, £3.5 million probably cost more than the whole Hearts team himself. McGregor, Starfeld.
Put it all together, but it's
Why is he picking Starfeld? The guy spent the last week in a bloody hotel room on exercise
you
bike
just
by
said you
himself.
don't want Beaton.
Well, Beaton played as well, so you
it's
could have
Beaton in Welsh.
yes, or Starfeld in Wales. You didn't have to play an unfit, unready Starfeld and a Beaton that was obviously unfit and we know isn't ready.
You can name all these individual players, but that's not factoring in that whoever we put at the back, they've all got a mistake in them.
Starfeld was rotten. That was a horror show.
Yeah, so he made a mistake and he's meant to be the new guy that's meant to do that, despite only training with his team on Friday. We had to bring on Kyogo, who'd only met the team on Saturday morning.
That was a Hail Mary. That was equivalent of Shane Duffy up front.
And this is where we are, because we've got this back line of the back five, including the keeper, that have all got a mistake in them. We're then into midfield where if Turnbull and McGregor don't perform, Celtic don't quite tick. Up front, we've got guys that aren't scoring goals. Our main strikers can't hit a barn door. Add to that the confidence, add all that together, and on that team on paper doesn't look as good anymore. As the match is still there to be won, you can't just look at a team and go, surely you can beat that team. That's not how football's played.
I know, but there have to be questions asked, Stephen. We can't just sit here and go, we're never going to beat Endeavour again until like the players come in. You look at these games and you go, Beaton was a mistake. Playing Beaton was a mistake. The Odsonne Edouard thing, I saw someone tweet something recently. It's like, can we have a grown-up conversation now about Odsonne Edouard? You know, I know there are like tropes and things that you don't necessarily want to attribute to players, but for me, Odsonne Edouard's a guy that, call it disinterested, call it head is elsewhere, call it hashtag head's gone. He might be trying his best, but he just can't focus because his mind is elsewhere and what moves, or he doesn't want to get injured. But there is something wrong with Odsonne.
Oh, definitely. And it doesn't really matter the reason anymore. It's just we need to accept that it's over with Odsonne Edouard. We need to get him shifted out the door as quickly as possible. And it's easier said than done. You can't just ring up clubs and say, we're going to take this guy off our hands, because they'll say, we'll give you one.
That's how we get our players though, Stephen.
We'll give you £1 million for Odsonne Edouard if we come up with that attitude. But it's not working anymore. I mean, even I'll give him the benefit of the vast doubt, rather, and say that even in the best case scenario, even if it's just bad form, it's because he's been at Celtic too long. It's because he's just.
Do you mean like the why doesn't matter anymore?
No, it doesn't. It's over with Odsonne Edouard. Any notion, and I know it's a common thing to say, just get another season at him. And there's this wee sentence in the middle of all that says, just get him motivated. And I'm like, well,
trying that for 2 seasons.
It's not how it works.
The guy's getting paid probably about 25 grand a week. If that's not motivating him, the idea of getting 40 or 50 or 60 down the road is probably motivating him.
Even at that, it's that's just not how it works. You don't just choose to motivate a player because there's nothing to offer.
Should he though? Should Odsonne Edouard be putting in better performances?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
We've seen Eric Sviatchenko.
Are we giving him a free pass here? Are we just accepting that things are shite at Celtic and do whatever he wants? Should he be putting in a better
the opposite.
performance?
My point is the opposite. I don't care anymore. It's over. We just need to get rid of him. It's like, I don't care if he's unmotivated or if he's just in bad form or whatever. I am firmly of the view that he's just been at Celtic too long, and keeping a guy like that already a season.
He's the sainted one, isn't he? A bit, Melly. He seems to be free from any sort of criticism. If he puts in a bad performance, it's no Odsonne's fault. It's because, the team are rubbish or the team are bad or he's unmotivated or he's been at Celtic too long. Surely if take James Forrest. I gave James Forrest pelters recently. I'm getting a wee bit sick of James Forrest. I think he's been at the club too long. I think he could be easily replaced by a much better player, James Forrest. I think we just accept James Forrest as a Celtic player because he's hung about so long. But he gets vastly criticised for some of the performances he puts in. Other players do, but Odsonne Edouard seems to be free from any sort of criticism.
I think that's sort of changed recently, and even the Midtjylland game last week, that was a disgrace from him. I've mentioned it before, but what I always say is, if you're having a bad game, you make sure the guy you're up against has as equally a bad game. He was up against Eric Sviatchenko, who we all know well as Celtic fans because we've seen him. He wasn't good enough, he wasn't physical enough, and he just wasn't strong enough. Yet he absolutely bossed Odsonne Edouard. If it had been a guy we don't know, you could go, maybe he's a good defender, but he beat Odsonne Edouard in the air every time. He was there every first ball. He was quicker than him. He done everything better than Odsonne Edouard, and we know Eric Sviatchenko isn't that great a defender. So that performance from Edouard midweek was a disgrace, and I don't like saying that about players because it just looked like nothing was happening for him. But if nothing's happening for you, you work harder to try and make something happen for you. I don't think he done that.
Odsonne Edouard Stephen is a player that can not win games on his own for Celtic, but the amount of times when he was fit and firing and back at his full motivated best, we knew you could give him the game, and he would terrorise defences. He pissed this league. It was far too good for him.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard that series of words said about anyone other than Lee
Lee
Griffiths.
Griffiths,
And it's starting to have shades of that. Do you know what? It's starting to have shades of the Griffiths debate because it's...
Yeah, you're right. Let me just correct myself there. I didn't say this, but I have no time for if we can just get him fit and firing again. That means nothing.
No, and it's exactly what I was about to say. It's like there's no more merit in just getting motivated than there is just getting fit, because that's the one thing that's missing. That's the key thing that is missing from all this. The fitness is gone and the motivation is gone. So
you could say that better. You could say, Ronaldinho wants to make a comeback at the age. Well, if we could get him fit and firing again and back to his Barcelona best, they'd be brilliant for us.
Yeah, I no doubt. But actually, the Hearts game was a disappointment. See, when I was watching it, I had tears in my eyes, Jamie. Tears in my eyes, and they weren't tears of joy or happiness. They were tears of disgrace. Try to say that with a straight face.
Tears of disgrace.
Tears of disgrace.
Right, okay.
But
glad you got it in.
But actually, it was a disappointment. Again, though, I felt like Celtic didn't play absolutely terribly. It wasn't bad. And do you know what? There's this weird trope about Scottish football. Maybe it's broader than Scottish football. Maybe it's in English as well. I don't know or particularly care. But there's a weird thing that you're not allowed to talk about how bad the refs are, because you know, if you talk about how bad the refs are, Hugh Keevins will slag you or something like that. But
you know
I'm afraid it's a perfectly valid point here. We usually take the kind of view that we should only really do it after we've won, because it just looks better. You look less like you're coming from a point of view of bitterness when you do it after you've won. But I'm sorry, this is unacceptable now.
So yes, last season we spoke about how many retrospective red cards Rangers got from games where they're basically allowed to commit fouls on the day, win the match, and we'll deal with the red cards later. And people saying, well, that's a retrospective red card for Andy Halliday. And I saw an English player, I can't remember who it was, he said last week that he got incorrectly sent off for a thing. He says, well, I miss a game, but the ref never misses a game. And that is, we need to maybe look at something like this. That was an awful decision from Bobby Madden. Terrible decision from a referee who really rates himself. He obviously thinks he's a top class ref. He obviously didn't want to send off his podcast pal, Andy Halliday. He didn't want to get him sent off. That was clear. But one thing that kind of annoyed me a wee bit was Callum McGregor was the only one that really protested about it. The whole Celtic team should have been up in arms about that. But I saw your man from BBC's The Terrace. I can't remember which one it was. Maybe Craig Fowler. He was saying, you know, he's a Hearts fan, and he was saying, oh, what's this? Celtic fans are annoyed at a conspiracy theory now just because it's not a conspiracy theory that sent Hearts down so they could win. And I just thought, is this what it's happened? Is this what we're happy now to accept awful refereeing decisions, blatantly awful ones, provided it happens to Celtic or Ram to your club?
Oh,
I mean,
he'll not listen anymore, by the way.
What?
He'll not listen anymore.
Oh, well, he's a big fan. But I just thought to myself, no, what you should be doing, or what MD should be doing, is going, okay, there's a plainly obvious refereeing fuck up. Let's talk about it.
The Halliday one, probably a booking for me more than a red card. Shocking challenge, but not.
Did you see him cup his ears? Did you see Halliday cup his ears? Yeah. No Celtic fans in the ground, only Hearts fans. The man is dumb. He just cupped his ears to his own fans after the game. I thought, what are you doing, Andy Halliday?
So you've got that where he doesn't get booked. Not a booking for that challenge, which is wild. Bobby Madden, you can see in the pictures looking right at it. We have the goal disallowed where there's two players playing him onside and he's not even close to being offside. If anything, his hands offside, if anything. So that was a complete guess. But
that's very important. That's something that not a lot of people talk about enough. It's just a guess. The
But
linesman just guessed.
But also, I watched the highlights of the games over the weekend, and I watched that Hibs Motherwell game yesterday. There was a blatant penalty for Hibs where a guy just got shoved in the back, told to get up by the ref. We had the Dundee game where St Mirren got a penalty, which is very debatable. We had the Rangers game where they had 4 guys offside for one of their goals.
And this is the
first
half the team, Mel. It's less than half the team.
First weekend of the season, and every single game you've seen referees all over the place. You can say, I don't think Celtic get a lot of decisions, but the refs in this country are terrible.
They're just out there making a
Absolutely
goal of it.
shocking.
Yeah, the point on guessing is a very valid one, because you're not supposed to sort of, like, you shouldn't be making guesses at all. But that was one of those ones where, even with the benefit of replays, even with the benefit of stills, it looked as if at most you would have like the corner of your shirt was offside or something like that. But that's a VAR-based argument, right? That's only when VAR comes into play where you start drawing lines and it's, his armpit's slightly offside, his kneecap's offside there. You can't just take a punt at it from the other side of the pitch.
It's the far side, so he's got 4, the Hearts back 4 across his eye line as well, and he's still calling Greg Taylor offside. And that was a massive decision in the game, because Celtic they let in the goal, which again was comical defending. Starfelt didn't cover himself in any glory, and that gives Hearts something to hold on to. But watching the game, Celtic had ridiculous amount of possession, and even the commentators in the game remarked on it, saying Hearts fans behind us are getting very tetchy. They are going wild because they're just sitting in. There was one point where Celtic had a goal kick. Their 2 centre halves were inside or just outside the box, and there was no Hearts player in Celtic's half from Celtic's goal kick. They just retreated right back, and that's all they done in that game. And then they get the winning goal in the last minute. Okay, they got the goal, they sat in, they lost a goal. Celtic should have went 2-1 up, and then they get a goal in the last minute from a set piece, and then it's brilliant performance from Hearts. No, it wasn't.
No,
it wasn't. Celtic didn't deserve to win the game, but they probably didn't deserve to lose. It's just the terrible individual mistakes again. But to change this around about Hearts and Craig Gordon wonder saves, yes, they were good saves, but he should make them. They get a goal from that because of Celtic's poor defending again, and the whole complexion of it changed. Where I know it's a big thing, but take out that goal in the first 10 minutes, Hearts were terrible in that half and had nothing. But Celtic are chasing a game because they've made an individual mistake again.
And this is where it all comes back to the communication, the preparation, the work behind the scenes. Say Celtic could qualify for the Champions League midweek and we were starting to get some good players in, and we drop points, that you wouldn't have this on top of piling on top, piling on top. And then once again, Ange Postecoglou is wheeled out post-match. I know managers have to do post-match, basically get one arm tied behind his back, and then the guy's off to a pretty... if you just looked at the result, pretty poor start as Celtic manager. No win in his first 3 competitive games.
No, there's no dressing it up. It is a poor start, and it's even with the Hearts game, I still don't think it was a particularly bad performance for all the reasons we've already spoken about. But here's a worry. Here's a worry with Hearts. In the spine of the team, I think Hearts had a better player.
Yeah.
Man for man, I think Hearts had better players than Celtic did, and that's a concern for a newly promoted team. Now, I might be overreacting based on one performance here, but the spine...
Talk about Andy Halliday.
Oh, no. The spine very specifically, I mean, goalkeeper, centre-half, midfielder, centre-forward, just purely on the performances of that game, Gordon was the best keeper on the pitch, no doubt about it. Suter, it's not even a contest. The guy they've got on signed from Everton, Baningime, I think his name is, was absolutely strolled it. And even Liam Boyce managed to turn in a better performance than anything we've got in attack, which is remarkable. So that's a concern. That's a concern.
We've got the Huns in about 4 weeks, Melly. We're not going to be ready for that, are we?
No, we're not, and we're already 3 points behind. It's a home game for them, so they'll expect to win. But what Stephen's saying is correct. Like, the spine of your team is huge nowadays, but also when Celtic were conceding goal after goal from set pieces last year, we knew we had to do something about it. And then looking at the team at the weekend, you've got a keeper who's not good enough, who's not commanding and doesn't save shots. Ralston, all right, he played well, good goal as well, we can come on to that. But then you're looking at the rest of the team. Scott Bain, he's a wee guy. No, I'm not talking about height, I'm talking about height, physicality and
mentality.
Mentality more than anything else. Scott Bain, wee guy. You had Near Beaton, the weeest of wee guys. Greg Taylor.
We have discussed this before. Like the profile of the team is all very.
Yeah, it's not been addressed again. Yeah. So then all your work you're doing, where if Celtic go into a game and any defence don't make any mistake, they get a goal. All it takes is a simple free kick into the box, and it could be chaos again. So But the point is, they haven't done anything to the rest of it. So the defence can all make individual mistakes. One ball into the box can cost a goal. And then when you've misfiring strikers, it's all just adding into this. And then what you're saying about Cal McGregor as well, the only guy that went up to Bobby Madden, there's nobody in there that is willing to, I'm not talking about tackles, but there's nobody there that's going to...
Where's the Lustig? Where's the Hayes? Where's the Browns? Where's the big characters?
There's nobody there that's going to put their foot in or be that have that mentality or that presence to go, do you know what, this game needs something. That boy in centre mid for Hearts done it. Sorrell can't do it. But David Turnbull is still a young guy as well, playing his first full season as a Celtic player. Then up front we've got Forrest, he's a wee guy. Edward, crosses flashing across the box that he doesn't want to go and header. It's all over the place. You've only got maybe McGregor and hopefully Starfelt will go on to have a bit of presence.
I think Starfelt was quite good, by the way, in this game. I know that might be overstating
He
it
started
slightly.
badly. He grew into the game. He grew into the game.
Absolute shocker defensively for the goal. But I think I saw enough of him to make me slightly encouraged for the way he's going to play. I thought he took control of things. He had a lot of the ball, an awful lot of the ball.
Most touches of any Celtic player.
Is that right? Well, that doesn't surprise me. I hadn't read that, but I'm not surprised at that. But he looks to make, or he looks to at least attempt quite sharp, crisp passes. He tries to keep the ball moving quite quickly. It's far from ideal start, much like most of the team and the manager, let's face it. But I'm encouraged by what I saw. He looks like I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he looks like he's hopefully going to be the kind of leader back there that we desperately need.
We definitely do. We definitely do need some leaders in that team, and it's something that we discussed on the Scouting podcast on Patreon about player profile, squad profile. It's more than just the attributes. It's more than just the stats. It's more than just the video. It's watching these guys during the game. Can they take leadership? Are they aggressive? What's their personality like?
Things are changing on a game-to-game basis as well, because judging by the last couple of games, Tony Ralston is a better player than Greg Taylor. He's given 100%. He's not good enough, but he's given 100% and he's making a contribution in games, whereas Greg Taylor isn't. So now I'm saying, is left back more a priority than right back?
No, we absolutely cannot. No, I'm not even having it on the podcast. Tony Ralston went on loan to two lower SPFL
he's not
clubs,
good enough, but
and none of them wanted him.
It's a pressing situation that the left back...
Buy them both, the money's there. But we just got, God knows how much money in. We've got a billionaire that owns the club, but he's not going to put his money in. Literal billionaire. Billionaires are firing himself into space now. He can go out and get a left back and a couple of full backs for Celtic.
But also then when you move further on, you're looking like, I've not been sure of Sorrow for a while, but now it's saying, Celtic need a centre midfielder.
But these are the facts, we just need them.
A couple of weeks ago we weren't sure if we needed a goalkeeper. Now we definitely need a goalkeeper. So game-to-game basis, everything is changing.
They are all priorities. All these positions are priorities. All of them. Right back, left back, centre half, goalkeeper, striker. All priorities. Central midfielder's probably a priority. We let one central midfielder go. And Olivier Ntcham, he was pictured while Celtic were playing in Europe. He was just sitting in the stand watching Marseille, having a right old time, mate.
He's city break.
City break at this time. Yeah, lovely. Olivier Ntcham signed a contract in 2018 that the Celtic website said keeps him at the club until at least the summer of 2022. Now, this is the summer of 2021, and it was announced that on the Celtic website that Olivier Ntcham has left because his contract ran out. Now, some people on Twitter were saying that final year, the third to fourth year, was an option for both parties.
But the option starts in the 1st of July, not August.
That doesn't quite stack up to the phrase at least the summer of 2022. There's been talk of a long time that Olivier Ntcham was upset at Celtic not so long ago. We were knocking back 12, 13 or whatever million euro bids for Port Road because we decided to keep him. Chris Boyd, of all people, made a big song and dance about how frustrated and upset Odsonne Edouard was and how he was basically in a huff. And
called him a troublemaker, didn't he?
I called him Odsonne Edouard there. I meant Olivier Ntcham. He called him a troublemaker, said he was pretty upset about the whole situation. I can't really remember the timeline of events, but it seems that he's not really performed for Celtic since we knocked back these bids. It seems that in retrospect there was maybe something in these rumours, Stephen, but also it seems that he's maybe told the club that he's no coming back. Let's work out a deal from a player. Let's let him go.
I don't think it's particularly uncommon for a player for that to happen to a player. We'll just sort of mutually exclusive this in the bin now. I think from memory, I think the Chris Boyd thing was a long time ago. I think he's probably won a couple of leagues since then. He's
signed that contract after it.
Yeah, right. He signed the contract after it.
I'd completely forgotten about the time frame. Thank fuck Chris Boyd wasn't right then.
And he has performed since then. much like there's a lot of romanticising of former players and how good they were and how they were basically flawless. I think it's the opposite as when Ntcham. Has he lived up to the potential he showed when he signed? No, not at all. But has he been good for Celtic? I would say, in spells he definitely has. And I've said it before as well, but towards the end of the 9 in a row, was it, when we switched the formation and all the chat was about Griffiths and Edwards making that work, and Ntcham was a big part of that as well. That wasn't all that long ago. He played really well in that period where that formation, the 3-5-2, really started working. So overall, a bit of a disappointment, because I think from memory we were all talking about how this guy could go and be like the best player in Scotland. Like, he should really be taking control of games and really stamping his authority.
And he did look that in some games. I remember,
he definitely did.
Was it the Rangers game at Celtic Park?
Great against the Huns on a couple of occasions, and had a couple of decent performances in Europe. And we'll always have Rom, of course. Yeah, that's a big goal, massive Celtic goal, of course, in the recent history. But yeah, overall a bit of a disappointment. It's fizzled out as well. There's been a lot of wrangling a wee bit online about how Celtic are getting a bit kind of blamed for not getting money for him, but I'm just like, what could he possibly be worth now? He's
We're
played.
saving money, no paying his wages for the next year.
Exactly. He's not played this season. He's been out on loan. He's clearly not part of the plans. If you were to take Ntcham to the open market, you'd get $1 million for him or something like that. If he's in his last year, So if $1 million, 850 grand, $1 million for Olivier Ntcham, the gamble there is keeping him for a year and having to pay him that. Yeah. So I've got no problem with Celtic just cutting that loss and just being like, right,
we did that with Sinclair. Gave him a 1 year deal, didn't play him, and then let him go in January.
Exactly.
Look, for me, Ntcham never really improved when he came to Celtic. You said didn't live up to hype. He came. He contributed. He seemed to be the player that he always is, and he seems to lose interest playing for Celtic. He always wanted to move abroad, which is, it's fine. That's what we sell these players. Yeah. We sell them the Champions League dream. We say, come to Celtic, we'll put you in the shop window, we'll put you in the European window, then you'll get the big move. And then a lot of it is just no transpired for a couple of guys, and then Ntcham's one of them.
Been here far too long. He's been here far too long. What is that? Be 4 seasons he's been there as well.
It took him a season to break through, but he never really made the position his own. I'm not going to miss Olivier Ntcham.
No, I think he's been decent in spells, as Stephen said, but I always wanted more from him. I just felt he was always sort of on the cusp of being the player you think he should be, but it's been too long now. It's been too long. There's been too many different managers who couldn't get it out of him, and it's just time to move on. We should have been moved on probably 2 seasons ago, because that's the way football works. That's the way Celtic should be working, but we didn't do it. I still would have quite liked to see him in a midfield without Scott Brown. Him, McGregor and Turnbull might have been decent, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over him. But it's another guy that we either are not going to replace, but we have to.
Well, there's plenty of work to be done still. The more, as you say, Melly, it changes on a game-by-game basis. Every time we watch Celtic at the moment, it seems like we've found another position that we need to strengthen, and Poodle Dan just the one boxing with one arm tied behind his back. Next up for Celtic, first home game, Dundee. We need to get a win.
Jablonec before that as well.
Well, of course, Jablonec before that, and then if we beat Jablonec, AZ Alkmaar away is finished third in the Dutch League last year. So it looks like Europa League's not going to happen either, which just brings into focus how important the Midtjylland game was, because we wouldn't be contending with this. So it's the Europa Conference League potentially for us, which would be nice because we could potentially be the first team to win the Europa Conference League. I don't know the standard of that, but
draw Aberdeen in it. Right. It's like that meme of is it Paul Rudd? Well, look at us. Who would have thought it?
Scott Brown scores a winner and sticks us out today. And on that bombshell, we shall wrap up this episode of 20 Minute Tims. I just want to thank you so much for listening. Thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon. You can check that out, patreon.com/20 Minute Tims. Stephen, would you like to say goodbye?
Why, I would, Jamie. Yes. Goodbye, folks.
Melly, would you like to take the floor and say goodbye?
Goodbye.
And on that, I will also say goodbye. Thanks for listening.